Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on boxing. I guess that answers my question. I do need to buy a new computer. I thought maybe I'd just buy a bigger iPad, and that way, uh, it'd be useful since I enjoy using iPad as a form. But in StreamYard, I can't share Google Slides to my presentation. So there you go. So iPads are not perfect for everything, after all. So a computer is essential. But today we're talking about, obviously, here's my slide presentation, Canelo Alvarez. Who is going to be the next Mexican superstar? Obviously, we know that Oscar De La Hoya for a long time was the Mexican superstar, was the guy that fought on the Mexican holidays, and was the guy that really made those pay-per-views on the two Mexican holidays sort of part of the culture, right? Especially for Mexican Americans. And then, of course, Canelo Alvarez took over, and now we're kind of at an impasse. What's up, Darkness? So we're at an impasse where we're trying to find out who is going to be the next great Mexican fighter. Or are we going to have to wait for an extended period of time? So today we're going to talk about 10 examples that I think potentially might be able to fill that role, depending on Mexicans and Mexican Americans and how they gravitate towards these individuals, and obviously what potential opportunities as far as big fights to galvanize and pull people together. So we will see. So obviously the title of this is The Next Great Mexican. Dun, dun, dun. Of course, my writing is backwards because, I can't share. So obviously, Canelo Alvarez for a long time was the face of boxing, not just in Mexico, but obviously in America as well, which really put some people's nose out of joint, right? Obviously, they would have preferred to have a Black American represent them, but unfortunately, you can't dictate who is going to be relevant. Right? A lot of us would never have dictated Floyd Mayweather to be relevant because he was a dick and just not a very exciting fighter. For him to be the face of American boxing, in truth, it almost killed the sport. And maybe it did kill the sport. Maybe that's why boxing in America right now is in such a doldrum. But regardless of that, obviously you would want somebody who's exciting, great on a microphone, somebody that's taking on all the best opponents, somebody that has all the best opponents. The perfect example of that was when we had Muhammad Ali, when he had killers like Sonny Liston, Frazier, Norton, Foreman, right? Guys that were legitimate opponents, right? That really galvanized the fans and gravitated people to these events. As I said on many times, people talk like Floyd Mayweather somehow is the biggest fighter in boxing history. But if you actually follow boxing, you know that that's not even fucking close to being true. I mean, the Floyd Mayweather era of boxing did not have nearly as many boxing fans as historically. An example of that is 1 billion people watched The Thrill in Manila. 1 billion people. And at that point, I think the population was 3 billion people, right? So literally a third of the world's population, maybe it was a fourth of the world's population, but regardless, 1/4, 1/3 of the world's population literally watched that event. Imagine the magnitude of that. Back in the day, though, when we had limited TV, that's kind of what happened. Big events galvanized boxing people and sports fans. The Olympics, when I was a kid, used to be huge. Now it's kind of something that people watch when they have time, but otherwise there's so much other things going on. Kids and their families don't necessarily gather around the TV to watch these events like they did historically, which is unfortunate because, growing up in that era, it was a family bonding sort of activity. Whereas now I got to ask, what kind of activities do families have that bond them and their kids together nowadays? Even in Canada, where we love hockey, right now, it's not the same as it used to be. But let's move forward and talk about who potentially could be the fighters that could replace this. And feel free, people, to leave the comments in the comment section below. Who do you think potentially could be the next great or the next great Mexican fighter? Obviously, we're going to start from the most likely people at this point and move down to people that potentially could fulfill that role. So number one on the list does become David Benavidez. Obviously, Benavidez right now is considered a pound for pound fighter by many people. Ring Magazine has him in the top 10. Obviously, he's just become a two-weight world champion and is talking about potentially moving to cruiserweight to fight Zurdo Ramirez to become a three-weight world champion. And that fight alone, even though it may not be the best fight and the fight that hardcore fans have been really asking for as far as David Benavidez is concerned. Sorry, I'm trying to put this so it's a little better. Let me just slip this shit up here and try this again. So there we go. Is that better? There we go. Okay. So obviously the Zurdo Benavidez fight, as far as casual fans, it's the kind of fight that's really going to grab a lot of attention, right? And especially Mexicans, because you're going to have two Mexican fighters kind of in a Morales Barrera situation, right? And we know how much those fights were loved, especially because they just also turned out to be great historical fights as well. With Zurdo and Benavidez, we have to wait and see if it turns out to be that kind of fight. But, fingers crossed. As far as the next potential great Mexican fighter, I mean, yes, I don't know how much Mexicans galvanize or gravitate towards David Benavidez. He is a guy that's Mexican and a Honduran, so he's not 100% Mexican. So I don't know if the population really sees him as one of their own. Any Mexican boxing fans that are watching my channel, let me know in the comment section below. You probably have much better idea about this than I do, as far as how people feel about him. Then we get to a fighter that obviously is another pound for pound fighter and great, and that is Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Very young, obviously a lot of opportunity to do great things in the sport. Already a two-weight unified champion. Obviously, we hear that he's probably going to be moving to 118 pounds bantamweight to become a three-weight world champion, right? Sometime in 2026. The problem with him is that he's a small fighter. And while small fighters can easily become pound for pound fighters, right, and get tons of attention for being one of the top fighters in the sport, they don't necessarily get the huge support financially, right, to be the face of boxing. Obviously, we did have Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who before Oscar De La Hoya was the face of Mexican boxing, but he was primarily focused in America on Don King cards, had historically great opponents, and was a little bigger, right? Spent most of his career, I think, around 130, 135, 140. So those weight classes, it's a little more feasible, right? Oscar and Floyd both went through those divisions as well. And then there was a transfer of power. Obviously, for Chavez, he transferred his power to De La Hoya. De La Hoya then transferred his power to Floyd Mayweather. So, and then Floyd, in a sense, and Oscar as well, passed their power over to Canelo Alvarez. If Canelo would have fought David Benavidez, maybe that would have been a similar circumstance. Maybe that would have sort of helped lead David Benavidez to potentially becoming the face of American boxing. For Bam Rodriguez, a potential fight with maybe Inoue, the monster, a guy who potentially could be seen as pound for pound number one fighter in the sport, to go up to what would be his fourth weight division to beat Inoue. That's the kind of thing that could definitely galvanize the Mexican boxing public to really support him, but it'd also get just boxing fans and America behind him as well. Then we get to a guy who, in truth, I think potentially has more opportunity to take the throne, and that would be, of course, Vergil Ortiz Jr. Vergil Ortiz Jr. has everything you need really to become a superstar fighter, right? He's well-spoken, well-mannered, right? Obviously a very exciting fighter with great knockout power. And he's currently in a division where there's a lot of potential big fights that could really grab people's attention. And then potentially moving up to middleweight. Obviously, unfortunately, he didn't become a champion at 147 because of health situations, but easily could become a two-weight world champion. I don't know physically if he has it in him to become a 168-pound champion. So that might be something that limits him progress-wise. Because when you think about these other great Mexican fighters, they've went through divisions, right? Went up, challenged themselves against the very best, whether we're talking about De La Hoya, a 5-weight world champion, Canelo, a 4-weight world champion, even Julio Chavez, who was, a 3-weight world champion? Was he more than that? He was at least, I think, a 3-weight world champion. So, it'll be interesting to see how Virgil Ortiz potentially can fulfill that situation. Uh-oh, gas leak. Even though you can't smell gas. Then, of course, we have Sebastian Funduro. Obviously, Sebastian is an exciting fighter, Mexican. His sister is obviously a world champion as well. And maybe the possibility of that could elevate him because of the whole family connection between him and his sister, both world champions. And the power between the two of them could potentially elevate both of them in a sense. Her doing great keeps her brother relevant. Him doing great keeps his sister relevant. And based on that, potentially the connection between the two of them could build each other up. It'd be the first time we really saw a brother-sister combo kind of do that sort of scenario. So maybe the combination of the two of them could become crowd favorites for boxing, Mexican boxing. They could be the king and queen of Mexican boxing. Even though he'd be my least choice, because I think out of all the fighters, he's not really I don't think his upside is that great, even though physically we could easily see him move to 160 potentially, then to 168, maybe even 175 down the road. Then, of course, we get David Benavidez' upcoming opponent, Zurdo Ramirez. Zurdo, he is as Mexican comes, right? So he's a person that hardcore Mexican fans would totally be behind and support, obviously. Speaks the language, is the culture, really fits in there. So, and with a fight with David Benavidez, that definitely gives him the opportunity to really become relevant. If he was to hold off Benavidez, who potentially would come up and challenge him at cruiserweight for his unified titles, right? That would be huge, huge. And obviously people would really get on board. And then you think about the potential fight with Jai Opetaia, which potentially could become for undisputed, which that also would play a big part into him really becoming the face of Mexican boxing if he was to become the next undisputed cruiserweight world champion by beating David Benavidez, by beating Jai Opetaia. Yes, Drunk Irishman, let's go Liverpool. Finally, we got a bit of a roll going. So, I heard they almost blew it at the end of the game, but, as long as we got 3 points, that's all that matters. But yeah, so obviously Zurdo, speaking of Drunk Irishman, we know he loves Zurdo. So he was the first person talking about Zurdo Ramirez being part of the pound for pound list. So, I'm sure he would be keen to see Zurdo as the face of Mexican boxing. Then we have another really entrenched Mexican fighter, and that is Rafael Espinoza. Espinoza, exciting fighter, right? Getting better day after day. Like every time you see him, he's really getting a lot better, which is, fun. He's obviously very tall, very long, exciting fighter. So the possibility of him going from 126 to 130, potentially to 135, maybe even potentially to 140, that could obviously help elevate him as well. As potentially the next great Mexican fighter. But a lot of it depends on who he's going to fight. Currently, obviously, a fight between him and Nunez Navarrete at 130, that would be a huge fight. You get two other hardcore Latin fighters fighting each other for unification. He moves up and challenges the winner. That would get a lot of people's support. Then, potentially moving up to 135, you have fighters like potentially Shakur Stevenson, Abdullah Mason, Cruz, Schofield. Like, if he was to beat fighters like that, he'd become pound for pound one of the top fighters in the sport of boxing. And obviously, that's what you need to do to really sort of take over the sport. What are we saying? Stringer says, I hate how DB is pretending like Zurdo is the best cruiserweight. Well, yeah, of course he is. Yeah. And downplaying the fact that he was already schooled by Bivol. Christmas background, I see. Well, it's Christmas, right? Does it have to be Mexican or Mexican American? No, it could be either one, right? Obviously, Canelo is Mexican. Before him was De La Hoya, who was Mexican American, the Golden Boy, Olympic gold medalist. And before him, it was Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., who's obviously Mexican. So, you know, Mexican fans, I don't think, obviously, they're probably going to be more interested in supporting Mexican fighters, but they'll be happy to also support Mexican American fighters. Obviously, there's a connection between the two of them. Benavidez is the face of Mexican boxing. That's why he is taking Canelo May and September dates. That has nothing to do with him. That has everything to do with promoters. Everything to do with promoters. Because every single pay-per-view he's done had done garbage fucking numbers. But this is the PBC. The PBC, of course, are going to try to fucking jam fucking somebody into these positions, like they tried to jam Tank Davis as the face of American boxing, but he's not, never was never fucking even close to Canelo, but they tried to jam him in there, acting as if he was. And obviously Benavidez, who's really the only face that PBC has currently, you know, unless we talk about Funduro, and obviously you'd have to expect Benavidez to be above Funduro at this point. Zero is the best cruiserweight. As for now, yes, Opetaia is lineal, but he only beat a near 40-year-old Briedis. Zurdo beating belt holder after belt holder. Oh, I mean, come on, man. Briedis easily was the best cruiserweight in the division, a guy that already won the World Boxing Super Series, right? So Jai Opetaia beating him twice to confirm his greatness. I mean, what else do you want the guy to do? Zurdo's a guy who couldn't win a title at 175, went up and took on the easiest challenge at 200 pounds, and then took on an easier challenge to unify. If Jai Opetaia would have got those opportunities to unify, he too would be a unified champion. Does Zurdo honestly beat anybody better than Briedis? Fuck no. No. His best opponent is who? A guy that Briedis already beat in the World Boxing Super Series. Opetaia is a proper hype job, in my opinion, but we'll see. See, the stupidity with that kind of statement is, how's he a proper hype job when nobody even talks about him? He is one of the most unhyped fighters in boxing today. One of the least talked about, most ignored. So how exactly would he be considered a hype job? Ask yourself that question. I don't know if guys like you understand what the concept of hype job is. Hype job is like Tank Davis, a guy who never took on any legitimate fucking opponents, but was talked about being the face of boxing, a pay-per-view star. That's a hype job. A guy that was built up based on hype, not based on fucking actual victories and actually doing anything. Zurdo. No way you're saying beating 40-year-old Briedis is greatness and not like he destroyed him. He went life and death, resorted to clinching and running in the second fight. And Briedis is a fucking great fighter. Briedis is the guy that gave Usyk the toughest fight of his fucking career. So what's your point? Like, that's the same guy that gave Usyk, currently pound for pound #1 in the world, the toughest fight of his fucking career. Went on to become a World Boxing Superstar champion after losing to, obviously, Usyk the year before. Like, that's when you beat the legitimate name in the division. That's what Jai Opetaia did. And sure, it's a tough fight, but he's also inexperienced. didn't have a lot of fights, jumped up from fighting, this kind of opponent to all of a sudden facing the man in the weight class. So if it wasn't easy, we can understand why. Zurdo, only Mexican to be a champion at super middleweight and cruiserweight. What does that fucking mean? The version of Briedis that Usyk fought would have stopped Opetaia easily. Too much stamina and work rate. That's all hearsay, man. Why are you guys always fucking pushing hearsay? Hearsay. That's your opinion. It's not based on facts. It's just based on your opinion. Opetaia will beat the brakes off of Zurdo even worse than Bivol because he won't have that massive size advantage he had over Dimitri. Well, Dimitri's obviously a better boxer than Jai, but Jai has crippling power, far more similar to Beterbiev than obviously Bivol does. Different style fights, right? I mean, Zurdo's a tough fighter because he's long. He moves a lot now. But eventually, he's going to be getting hit, right? The biggest thing he has potentially to his advantage is that Jai Opetaia does look like his gas tank is not great, right? And that he tires out as the fight progresses. But we're not talking about Jai Opetaia. We're talking about Mexican greats. Zurdo looks so slow. Slow against who? Against Bivol or at cruiserweight? Because I think like Canelo moving to 168, that's also what benefited Zurdo. Him moving to cruiserweight, where he's now faster, both feet and hand-wise, compared to the cruiserweight competition that he's fighting. Yeah, Sean Bivol is a better boxer, but I'm pretty sure Zurdo was north of 200 that night. Oh, fuck, easy. The last fight I watched him. Okay. Benavidez would beat the brakes off of Opetaia late in the fight. See, once again, AJ, hearsay. Like, it's okay that that's your opinion, but that's all you're saying. You're just giving opinions and acting like somehow you're spitting truth. You're not spitting truth. You're giving your opinion. We don't know what David Benavidez would do because we've never fucking seen David Benavidez fight anybody at cruiserweight. So if we're talking about 175, that might be a different conversation. But at this weight class, who knows? He looks fat at 160. It's 175. What's David going to look like at fucking cruiserweight? Baby fat fucking monster. That's what he's going to be. Nobody talks about how shit Opetaia's stamina is. Didn't I just fucking talk about it? Didn't I just mention it? Like literally, we just had that conversation. So what do you mean nobody talks about it? Zurdo's style has improved since moving up from brawler to a boxer puncher. I don't give a fuck about opinions. I want to see the fight. Exactly. So you give your opinion all the time. It's not like you read a fax machine. Well, everything I'm telling you now is not based on opinion. I didn't say who's going to win. I didn't say somebody's going to fucking beat the brakes off of fucking somebody else. I didn't make any fucking opinion-based fucking comment yet. Everything I said was based on fucking truth. Zurdo did easily get fucking beat by Bivol, but Bivol's obviously a very different fighter than Jai Opetaia. We don't know what David Benavidez is going to do at cruiserweight because we've never seen him fight at cruiserweight. Tell me one thing I said that wasn't fucking 100% true. See, this is the difference between actually having a fucking boxing conversation and just jamming your opinion in people's face like somehow everything you say is fucking factual. No. Biased, yes. Factual, no. Drunk Irishman, your thought Zurdo looked good in his last fight? Drunk Irishman loves Zurdo. Zurdo's fucking an adopted Irishman. He fucking is painting his beard fucking green. Okay, no more opinions. Only allowed to speak facts like BFTB. Well, does he speak facts? Maybe. But we're not talking about him. We're not on his channel. You can say what you want. I'm just saying that's your opinion. Right? You're allowed to have an opinion. Nothing wrong with that. But let's just call it what it is. So let's move to the next name on my list. Because obviously we talked about Rafael Espinoza, who, I think probably has a better chance than Zerto. He's younger, potentially could move through multiple weight classes, and potentially has some great American opponents, right? Guys that could really elevate him pound for pound wise and internationally, globally. Zerto, obviously, depending on, he needs to fight David and Jai Opetaia. If he beats both of them, maybe then he's the face of boxing. Zerto was a solid fighter, but in my opinion, his ceiling was always going to be somewhat low. Yeah, I think so too. I've never been overly impressed with him, even at 168. He's kind of like Benavidez and Smith, guys that could have went for greatness, but none of them did. None tried to fight unification fights. None tried to fucking make a statement at 168 pounds. Then the next one, obviously, this is the guy who has the biggest possibility of becoming the face of Mexican boxing. But he's a clown and a guy that unfortunately, has kind of dropped shit already. And that's, of course, Ryan Garcia. We know Ryan has that star potential, right? The star mentality. He's got that. But outside of that, does he have the determination? I don't think he's got that. I don't think he's determined enough, focused enough, professional enough to actually become that kind of fighter. And at the end of the day, that's important, right? You need to be fucking dedicated to your sport. Tank Davis, not dedicated to his sport. Ryan Garcia, obviously he shows potential, but that guy is fucking more of a social media YouTuber than he is a real boxer. So even though he does have the fights potentially available to him, like a Devin Haney rematch, potentially trying to become undisputed at 147 pounds, obviously potential fights with guys moving up like Tio and Shakur, potentially moving up to 154 for fights against guys like Virgil Ortiz and Jerome Boots Ennis. All those kind of fights could easily make him the face of boxing. But you need to win the fights, right? And at this point, I don't think anyone thinks he's going to fucking do that. Zerto has that Wilder padded record. Yeah, a lot of guys do. 40-0 against me and you. Opetaia is literally Wilder 2.0. No, he's a better all-around boxer than that. Zerto at least fought pound-for-pound opposition. He did, and got beat. Easily got beat. And he has a left hook power. How about Funduro? I mentioned Funduro. He is right there. There's just not much to say about him. I just don't think he's that good. Obviously, he's in a division where he could potentially build his name up, but the problem is he doesn't want to fight anybody legitimate. He's a typical PBC fighter, right? He literally wants to fucking go the easy route. He doesn't want to do what he needs to do to become legitimized. So, how much can you fucking support a guy like him? Salute aircraft carrier. Yeah, I mean, Ryan Garcia. Obviously, he's got the pretty boy looks like Oscar De La Hoya. He's got the great left hand. But he's a fucking douche, right? Who'd rather fucking talk loads of shit on social media than get in the gym and fucking work. Still doesn't have a fucking jab. Has no fucking feet. I mean, yeah. That dude, I don't know what he's doing with himself, but he's wasting his career. And got absolutely destroyed. Cap carrier, just daily in, sailed in. Then we get some potential fighters who might fulfill this role. First of all, is obviously a guy with family heritage, and that's Vargas, Emiliano Vargas. Obviously, he's got the promoters behind him, the network behind him. He's well-spoken, follows after his father, with being gregarious and outspoken. Obviously shows good power, so he's exciting so far against the limited competition he's been in with. But above that, at this point, he's still a prospect. He still has a lot of things to do before we could take him serious. Like a lot. I mean, right now he's not really even that relevant, right? Luckily, his father, based on his career and his name recognition, he's getting a lot of attention from that. But he still has to win the fights. He still has to have the opponents. He still has to do what he has to do to continue to grow. Ryan, is what happens when you get rich before you get good. Exactly. Exactly. And unfortunately, for the majority of young athletes in America right now, all of them are fucking like that. Literally every single one of them is in that situation. It should be Benavidez versus Opetaia next, but I don't know how much either side wanted. Well, Benavidez, why would he be next for Opetaia? The obvious fight would be Zurdo versus Opetaia, right? That's a unification fight. David Benavidez doesn't belong in the mix unless he's taking on the winner of that, kind of like Bivol and Beterbiev. But, and also to the American audience, I mean, Joe Opetaia, David Benavidez also won't sell nearly as well as Zurdo Ramirez will, because in America, nobody knows who fucking Jai Opetaia is. Literally nobody. So that shit don't make much sense either. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. Richard Torres could be the face of Mexican boxing because of the prestigious heavyweight division, but he has to look better. He's fucking small. He's fucking being fanboyed by the fucking LDBC. So already the kiss of death is fucking on him. Like when the LDBC starts fucking talking about you, you know the end is near. Literally, the end is fucking near. Once Opetaia's athleticism fades, he'll be easy pickings. Well, that's not true, Alan. What's going to happen is eventually he's going to move to heavyweight, and then that's going to only highlight his athleticism that much more, kind of like it did with Holyfield, David Haye, and Usyk, right? Opetaia, knocked out guy who isn't even top 30 in the division, and gets glazed. See, once again, you're lying. The guy he fought was his mandatory. You can be critical of mandatories, but if you want to do that, put the blame on the sanctioning bodies. Don't put it on the fighters. See, once again, this is my biggest gripe with fans like you. You know, you'll dick ride dudes fucking for being mandatories and then hate on people for not fighting their mandatories. But then when dudes do fight their mandatories, you shit on them too. So there's no fucking winning. It's all fanboyism, right? It depends on who the fighter is. If it's a fighter you like, then it doesn't matter. If it's a fighter you don't like, then you're going to be hypercritical. I saw Ring IQ did the Ring IQ hate mail on you, Sean. Yeah, I saw that. Even though he didn't use my name. But I didn't say anything hateful. What I said was factual and true. Most boxing fans think that De La Hoya beat Tito Trinidad, right, and was robbed on the cards. If you're going to say Lomachenko was robbed to Devin Haney, or fucking, Kovalev was robbed by Andre Ward, then you got to fucking keep the same energy for fucking De La Hoya. And I'm not a De La Hoya fan. Never was a De La Hoya fan. And then the Mosley fights, we know Mosley was on PEDs. He was part of fucking Bobco. So in hindsight, those fights fucking probably should be off the record, right? Kind of like Ryan Garcia's victory over Devin Haney is no longer part of his resume. And he did lose to B-Hop. And I said B-Hop is better than Canelo. And he said, no, he's not. See, this is what delegitimizes Ring IQ's pound-for-pound list. Because he put so much fucking energy into accomplishments. But accomplishments are your career. It's not about where you are right now. You can fucking be Manny Pacquiao, right? And beat fucking Rolly Romero. You would be on fucking Ring IQ's pound-for-pound list. Probably pretty fucking high based on your accomplishments. But everybody knows Pacquiao's not fucking great now. Just because you beat a bum in Rolly Romero or Mario Barros to win a fucking title, that doesn't mean you fucking are pound for pound, right? B-Hop had a fucking great career. beat fucking great opponents and dominated great opponents. Dominated Tito Trinidad, dominated fucking Kelly Pavlik, dominated Oscar De La Hoya, lost fucking to a fucking superstar in Roy Jones early on in his career, right? Became the first undisputed fighter during that whole era, and then moved to 175. And by that time, he was old. But yeah, but come on, man. Everybody knows he's a better fighter than Canelo. Does it mean he's accomplished more? No. Even though Canelo's never had 18 fucking title defenses, successful title defenses, never, right? B-Hop did. B-Hop literally dominated the middleweight division like historical fighters did. Canelo is one of the modern fighters who jump up and down through multiple weight divisions, right? Like Floyd, Oscar, Hearns, Leonard, right? You know, it's a different perspective, but I don't think you could talk to too many people right now that don't think that B-Hop overall was a better fighter than fucking Canelo and would have literally beat fucking Canelo at whatever weight you want to pick, 160, 168, 175. I think most people would have favored fucking B-Hop to beat him. I've never been a Hopkins fan. I was a Hopkins fan when he was at 160. Yeah, I think most people would pick Hopkins. Hopkins is 6'1", much longer, a more natural fucking light heavyweight compared to Canelo, who's always been undersized. Canelo has bad footwork. B-Hop didn't. B-Hop had a better jab, more length, was also a very smart fighter, right? Yeah. The only guys that beat B-Hop were high volume people, like Jermaine Taylor and guys like that at 175. Also, the guy that beat him, high volume fighters, right? Guys that outworked him when he was older. Oscar beat Tito and Mosley in the rematch, and he was on roids. I have never been a Hopkins fan. Hopkins is better than Canelo in almost every category. Yeah. Hopkins had more title defenses, better prime wins, and miles better longevity all over Canelo. Do you think B-Hop would have lost to fucking Bud Crawford moving up from 147? Right? And I ain't hating on Canelo. I'm just putting things in perspective. But this is Ring IQ's thinking, right? Saying, oh, B-Hop's not better than fucking Canelo because Canelo's a 4-way world champion. Okay. Congratulations. What does that fucking mean? B-Hop easily could have become a 3-way world champion. Does that make him more legitimate that he didn't get a world title at 168? Hopkins had more titles. Yeah, B-Hop looked great against De La Hoya, but Oscar was too much more undersized, if you were being honest. Yeah, but wasn't that much undersized. Either was Tito Trinidad. They were both not small midgets moving up in weight. They were big guys who dominated smaller fighters and eventually moved into a more natural weight. Both of them were champions at 154, right? And actually, didn't Tito win a title at 160? B-Hop is better than Canelo. Canelo, in my opinion, is easily the most overrated Latino-Mexican fighter of all time. Well, I won't say overrated. I'd say that's probably Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. If you ask me, James Toney is the most skilled out of all three. Not most skilled, but all three were skilled. Salute Sean in the chat. Salute James Toney at 160, 168. Roy was the best athlete, fucking easily. Canelo was less athletic than B-Hop too. Canelo had more flaws technically, lacked size and athleticism. Hopkins may have been the craftiest. Hopkins was like fucking Andre Ward, right? Those were old school fucking crafty dudes that just knew what to do, how to win. Canelo's the same. He also has a lot of that, but do you think he's as good? I mean, really? Canelo losing to a guy like Crawford, even though it was close, shows you what level of fighter Canelo really is. Yes, Crawford would stand no chance against B-Hop or a prime Golovkin. Yeah, I don't think so. Hopkins has a better resume. Yes, Canelo won more divisions, but that's like saying Marquez is better than Hagler because he won 4 divisions. Exactly. And that's my point when Ring IQ talked about my comment. Sure, I know he didn't beat Tito. I'm just saying what public opinion is. And yes, Mosley was on roids. So those fights probably should be taken off of fucking De La Hoya's resume, right? And then De La Hoya, like he acted like he doesn't have great wins. He said, "Oh, he arguably beat Pernell Whitaker." I'm a huge Whitaker fan, so of course I wanted Whitaker to win. But I've never heard anyone else, unless it was tribalistic, think that De La Hoya lost to Whitaker. Everybody knows Whitaker beat Chavez, but I haven't heard anyone legitimately say that they feel that Mayweather beat Oscar. But you think of fucking Pernell, Chavez. Those two wins right there, to be all honest, are better than any wins on fucking Bud Crawford's fucking resume. Two wins. Two. I rate guys like Tito, Oscar, B-Hop, Tony all over Canelo. Oh, yeah, me too. Tito was a different type of fighter. Boxer, puncher, exciting. Oscar, skilled. B-Hop, old school. Tony, old school as well, but also caught on PEDs, so that sort of ruined his legacy a little bit. Saying Crawford doesn't stand a chance against anybody in and around his weight class is hyperbole. Historically, great fighters have a chance in any fight. Well, you just said a guy fucking had no chance against fucking Zerto or who you said. So now you're contradicting yourself. I always thought Oscar won the second fight against Mosley anyways. Crawford would have lost to Manny that bludgeoned Margarito. I had Sweet Pete beating Chavez, but not Oscar. Yeah, that's what everybody felt, right? Even though I wanted Sweet Pea, so of course, being a young man, I acted as if he won, but I got to be realistic. He didn't. Whitaker didn't do anything to De La Hoya. He was spoiling and shaking his ass and gave away the fight. Oscar did arguably lose to Ike. Opetaya isn't historically great. Not yet, but he's still in his career. We got to let the guy fight, right? Oscar and Bud at 154. Who you got? Oscar gets hated a lot. I mean, when you think about how competitive his fight was versus Floyd, Floyd ducked the rematch because it was competitive, because Oscar was very effective in that fight early on. Oscar had a great jab, good movement, a great left hand. I mean, Ring IQ also said, got knocked out. How many times did Oscar get knocked out? Once. He got knocked out by a body shot by B-Hop. That's the only time he's ever been knocked out. Against Pacquiao, he didn't get knocked out. He quit on the stool. Didn't get knocked out. Never got knocked out taking a punch to the face. Guy had a great chin. Great fucking chin. So the question you got to ask is how effective would Crawford be against a guy like Oscar? Because Oscar is not fucking Canelo, right? He's longer than Canelo. He's taller than Canelo. He actually can move around the ring. He actually throws a fucking jab and a very effective jab. And his left hand is great. And he has a fucking right hand as well. So he's a much better all-around fighter than Canelo was. Better resume, Canelo or Crawford? Oh, fuck. Canelo's resume is obviously way better than Crawford. Crawford's best wins are Canelo and fucking Spence. After that, he's got okay wins. Prime Oscar beats Floyd and Crawford, in my opinion. I think he potentially does. Potentially does. Oscar De La Hoya had much faster feet than Canelo and had a better jab. His jab is what won him the fight against Tito. Well, and comparing his feet, like, come on. His feet were probably faster than fucking Bud Crawford. Crawford doesn't really have fast feet, right? Obviously, he can move, but he's not like a Meldrick Taylor type of fighter. Bud had better accolades than Canelo, though. Well, now he has. Now that he's become a 3-weight undisputed champion, right? But prior to that, Canelo was a four-weight world champion, right? Unified in almost every single division except light heavyweight, was undisputed uh, as well. At that point, where was Bud, who's older than Canelo, right? Let's remember, when Bud Crawford was the same age as Canelo is now, he wasn't as accomplished as Canelo is, right? And he didn't have the great fucking resume, the 2 wins that make his resume great. He didn't have those either. All that stuff came later in his career, recently. Crawford doesn't have fast feet as well. That's a good point. Crawford also loses balance, often due to how wide his stance is. Bud was lucky to never face an elite athlete his size that would have. Yeah, and Spence is probably the best athlete, natural welterweight that he fought. But I still hold true to what I said before when I was catching hate for being a racist. Spence fucking was never the same after fucking the car crash. Not to hate on Crawford, that's just fucking obvious, right? His eye got detached. Why? Because that's the kind of result that happens when serious shit happens to you, like a car crash of that magnitude. Continue to punch him as he was going backwards. Oscar was a technician. He was. Remember, he worked with Floyd Mayweather's dad, right? Had a lot of success. Obviously couldn't work with Floyd's dad when he fought Floyd, but leading up to that, I mean, he was working with fucking Mayweather Sr. Crawford is technically limited fighter who relies on being the better athlete. The best athlete Crawford ever fought was Gamboa. Gamboa had no problem landing on Bud. Well, early on. After that, Crawford, like good fighters before him, was able to adapt and take that away from Gamboa. Spence avoided Bud for 5 years. No pity here. He was a shell of himself when the fight finally happened. Yeah, I agree, Alan. I agree. I'm not giving him fucking benefit of the doubt. Like, obviously, it's his fault, choices he made, right? If Crawford wasn't 3 weight classes bigger than Gamboa in fight night, he would have been knocked out. Well, that's speculation, right? We know you hate Crawford, Evan, so to a certain extent, we can't necessarily roll with that, but I get your point. Madrimov is another example. He continued to hit Crawford all night. No, he didn't. As Crawford was exiting, Madrimov technically is no Bivol, Inui, Usyk, Loma technically either. That's true. But what Madrimov didn't do was exchange. He spent most of his time fucking on the outside, bouncing in, bouncing out, but never committing to punches. So he didn't land a lot of punches. Go back and watch that fight. You can't land punches when you don't fucking... when you don't commit yourself to the punch. He was never committing himself to his punches. I don't hate Crawford. I'm just realistic on his limitations. Come on, man. A lot of stuff you say is unnecessary, so then it's considered hate. Bud clearly beat Madrimov. Only Bud haters say different. Exactly. Excuse me. Why does the champ have to exchange with the challenger? Ortiz beat Madrimov way more convincingly due to his superior technique. No, he didn't. It was a completely different fight. Madrimov didn't fight fucking nearly the same way against Ortiz because Ortiz was never fucking as dangerous as Bud Crawford was. He knew he couldn't do what he did with Ortiz or he would have got knocked the fuck out. So he never committed. And because of that, the fight was boring. He never won because you can't win a fight if you don't fucking throw punches. I had Ortiz winning 9 rounds to 3. Yeah, but some people think Madrimov did far better than that against Ortiz. But based on how bad Ortiz looked in his previous fight against Bohulchuk, getting dropped twice, it's natural that people thought he did better in that fight just because he didn't get as dominated. Not true. Madrimov was in the ropes covering up all night. Ortiz pushed him back all fight, something Crawford didn't do. Okay. We're not talking about Crawford. This video has nothing to do with Crawford. It's about the next great Mexican fighter. I don't want to hear from anyone at 54 till they're ready to face Bakram. I agree. Madrimov wasn't even trying to win. Madrimov actually tried to beat Crawford. He just had no chance. So let's move forward to the next person on the list. The next guy, I know some of you guys, he's your favorite. That would be Diego Pacheco. Diego, who came under a lot of scrutiny for fighting like Devin Haney in his last fight, even though fighting like Devin Haney, he landed twice as many punches as Devin Haney. So let's just establish that. He did hold a lot, but he still landed 140 punches, not 70 in the fucking fight. So it was easily a far more exciting fight than the Devin Haney fight. The benefit he has is that he's in a fucking packed division. Also with Canelo Alvarez there. If he potentially could get a Canelo Alvarez fight, that's the fight that could, tip the scales and make him the next great Mexican fighter. Kind of like David Benavidez was hoping would happen to him. But for Pacheco, maybe if he beats Shiraz, then that would be the natural fight. Him versus Canelo. Lights, no more Crawford talk. I don't know about any Mexicans. Shiraz will knock his ass out. Pacheco ain't like that. He's tall and long, and that's about it. Well, when you think about Pacheco compared to a Sebastian Funduro, he's a much better technical fighter than Funduro. He fights behind a jab. He fucking throws the hook to the body. He's a solid fighter, and that's why people were so high on him early on in his career. Shiraz is a gifted athlete. Makes me think Adames is underrated. Well, yeah, Adames fought fucking brilliantly in that fight. Made Shiraz look like shit. So especially when people thought that Shiraz basically was ducking the Janibek fight to take on a lesser opponent. Go watch the Adames Crawford sorting session. Adames is very talented. Shame it looks like he's wasting his prime avoiding Janibek sparring session. Well, that's the problem, right? He should have obviously he should have fought Janibek. That would have been the fight to make him a star. But what did he do? Didn't do it. Sorry, I'm kind of caught between a Korean movie, where a flood takes over the city. Shiraz is gifted athlete. Well, he's long. He's very similar, right, to Funduro and Pacheco. Very long, very big for the weight, able to establish distance because of his length, but he also has very good power, which is similar to Funduro and Pacheco. Who's better between the three of them? We'll have to wait and see. Will Pacheco fight Shiraz next? Maybe. I think it'd be a good fight. I'd be keen to see it, but I don't know the likelihood of that fight actually happening. Even though we do know that Turki Al-Sheikh is behind pushing Chavez, right? Pushing Shiraz. So with Turkey's money behind him, anything is possible. Maybe Shiraz will be the next great Mexican fighter. Shiraz has very good biomechanics. Rare to see a tall guy like that throw such effective hooks and uppercuts. Well, that's the thing, right? There's different forms of athleticism. Athleticism is not just explosive run jump athletes. It's also endurance athletes, timing, precision. There's a lot of different things that make a great athlete. Then we get to the guy that potentially could be the next great superstar. And that is Mexican Olympian Marco Verdi, silver medal Olympian. It's not very often where you get a Mexican fighter who's a dominant amateur fighter and able to win an Olympic medal, right? I mean, I couldn't even think of fucking one other Mexican fighter who's ever been able to accomplish that. So for Marco Verratti to do that, that's the writing on the wall. Already fucking Mexico's behind him because he brought a silver medal to the country. So right now he's a superstar in the country. Now obviously he's being promoted by Canelo Alvarez, who's sort of taken him under his wing. He's been on some of his cards, so he's getting obviously a lot of recognition and big pay-per-view opportunities. Currently 3-0, 2 knockouts. Big kid, looks good. Obviously great amateur pedigree. But obviously he's a few years away of being sort of in the conversation. Because, I mean, he's still young. He's going to have what? Probably another 10 to 12 fights before he's potentially fighting for a world title. 10 to 12 fights. When you think about that in context, the way fighters are nowadays, they don't fight that active, right? So that potentially could be fucking 5 years before he has that many fights. 5. 5. So we will see. Working on Sunday. Yeah, all the Mexicans are big on Verde. Yeah, he looks great, right? And you think about the kid, he's young, skilled, power. Obviously, Canelo is in his corner. Already being a medalist, Mexico's behind him. So it's just a matter of how they maneuver him forward. But that's my list of the potential guys who could be the next great Mexican fighter or the Canelo replacement. But what do you guys think? Out of all those names mentioned, who do you think is the most likely to end up taking over and being the face of Mexican boxing? Let me know in the comment section below. There's 7 of you watching, so I should see 7 comments. Go. He was pretty good puncher's instincts. Yeah, no, he looks good. I mean, obviously he's young, right? So at this point, you don't want to overhype the kid, but he's looked good. Sandoval has a lot of ability. Sandoval. Oh my God, Evan. Sandoval, who beat fucking Kenshiro Taraji at 112 pounds. Like, already I talked about how it's going to be hard for Bam to become the face of boxing because he's such a small fighter. And now you're going down to 112 pounds to Sandoval. Jesus Christ. I don't see him being the face of Mexican boxing. It's kind of like, remember there was the conversation about who was the best Mexican fighter. And obviously Canelo was number 1. And then number 2, they had Estrada. They had to go that far to find somebody from Mexico that was on par with Canelo. Problem is he's a flyweight, so he won't have that much push. Exactly. What about Espinoza? Isn't he Mexican? Yeah, I listed Espinoza. Espinoza was on my list. I said potentially him moving up to 130 to take on the winner of Navarrete Nunez would get him huge support in the Mexican community. And then moving up potentially to 135 to beat guys like Shakur, O'Shaquie Foster, Abdullah Mason. You beat them and you become a pound-for-pound fighter. You become a 3-weight world champion. And at that point, you're getting a lot of attention. Espinoza's already 31. Yeah, so he got to fucking shit or get off the pot. Yeah, not that much. Especially not what he's doing currently at 126 pounds, which is not fucking unifying and not taking on the best opponents available to you. I want to see Espinoza versus Kakachi at 130. That would be good. He moves up, fights Kakachi, and then the winner of Kakachi Espinoza takes on Nunez and Navarrete. TMI. TMI. But yeah, so that's my list of the next great Mexican fighter. We'll find out who's going to live up to that expectation. But at this point, it is what it is. And the thing I did learn today was what? Merry Christmas, everyone. But I also learned that I do need a fucking computer because on an iPad, I can't do everything I need to do to make content. Anybody a computer whiz? I'm in a struggle right now. Should I buy the MacBook Air 15 because I'm getting old, I want the big screen, or should I buy the 14-inch MacBook Pro M5, which has a better screen, better speakers, more power, and is only maybe $150 more than the iPad? Let me know. Bam needs to fight the winner of Junto and Inui. And that's what I said. Potentially for him, if he was to move up and beat Inui or Junto to become an undisputed 122-pound champion, that shit would be huge, right? But would it make him a superstar in America? I don't know. You know how finicky American boxing fans can be. Who is the more marketable? That's the question. Ryan Garcia, right? If he wants to be a star, he needs to step up in competition. He has all the ability. Well, and he's already beaten a bunch of named opponents, right? Rungvisai, Quadras, Estrada. So at this point, you got to fucking not take on just old name opponents. You got to take on legitimate fucking challenges. Fights that people think potentially you could get beat in. Always get the better Mac. You can always connect to a second monitor. Yeah, that's what I figure. I figure I'll get the Pro because I just had the M2 and I thought I need to replace the screen, but apparently I need to replace the screen and the motherboard. I'm like, that computer is fucking not even 3 years old and I need to replace it. Motherfucker. So yeah, I'm not very excited because of that. That's kind of pissed me off. That's why I was kind of leaning away from a fucking Air as well. Because it's like, man, you spend like $1,000 on a new computer and then 2.5 years later you need to fucking replace it. Cocksucker. Yeah. That's why I was thinking I'd rather get the MacBook or the the iPad Pro 13-inch, just because at least I can use it for school as well as using it at home. You add a keyboard to it, you can do everything you want. But I can't add Google Slides videos to my StreamYard, so that's fucking a waste. So computer it is. But you know, Christmas, last thing you want to do is spend $1,400 on a computer after everything else, but it is what it is. C'est la vie, c'est la vie. Some people have bigger problems, so I won't complain. Joker has the most assists all time at center. Yeah, talk about underrated. I mean, people still don't want to fucking really give him praise as being potentially the best center of all time. Like, you think about, I love Olajuwon. Olajuwon's on my dream team, right? Olajuwon, Garnett, Bird, Jordan, and who was my point guard? Oh, Curry. Even though I love Derrick Rose, but obviously Curry fits into that team structure much better with his shooting. You add him to that squad, dynamite. And Olajuwon, great defensive player, great offensive player, could easily guard small guys out of the post, right? But skill-wise compared to Olajuwon to fucking Joker, man, the things Joker does, the passes he makes, fucking ridiculous. Like, people praise so much guys like Bird and Magic Johnson. But if you look at a highlight of passing, Joker's fucking highlight passes are better than both of theirs combined. literally, right? The things he does harken back more to what's his face, the guy from fucking LSU, the shooting guard that averaged so many points in college basketball, and then went to Utah, and people never got to see him play. What's his name? Fuck, can't remember that white boy's name, but yeah. How long do you think Picasso lasts against Inoue? I think Picasso's going to give Inoue a good fight. I think people are hating on Inoue. They just don't like Inoue, so they're looking for any reason to criticize his level of competition. But I think Picasso is underrated. I think he's going to perform very well. I think initially, obviously he's going to lose, but I think potentially that fight might go the distance. Potentially, yes, Pistol Pete. Thank you very much. Thank God. I was trying to think. What's his name? Pistol Pete Maravich. If Joker can win 2 rings, he has a real chance to be universally recognized as the best center ever. Maybe the only other guy that can be argued is Kareem. Think about it as well. The guy potentially after this year could be the only player in NBA history to average a fucking triple-double 2 years and in a row, back to back, right? Like, fuck, man. Unbelievable. Brandon Smith knows how to pass the damn ball, too. He's a good player. I always liked him watching that team play. He was always a very good player, very underrated. Purdue is heating up after their bad performance against Iowa State, won 3 in a row by over 20. And Duke just lost today, right, to Texas Tech. That's a shock and surprise. Nobody could have expected that to happen. If Inoue wins or if Taraji wins, they deserve Fight of the Year. No point in giving it to a retired fighter. Look at you, but you're not a Crawford hater. Come on, man. DEI, but don't deserve it. Duke blew that game. Purdue blew out Tech by 30. Yeah, but you got to be fair and honest, right? Where was the game? Did they have home court advantage? All kinds of things play in when you talk about that kind of stuff. Oh. You can't win Fighter of the Year off one fight. I understand what you're saying, but the reality is he's going to win Fighter of the Year. That's just the truth. Because his win versus Canelo, jumping up from 154 all the way to 168, winning in the effective manner that he won in, yeah, it's just the way it's going to be. Who you picked as the possible top 3 great Mexicans? Well, I picked 10. The question was for you to decide who you think deserves to be number 1. Activity matters when you want to be Fighter of the Year. Yeah, it's unfortunate, though, that 2 of the guys that Inoue fought, Cardenas, he's a top 10 fighter, but the other guy wasn't even top 20, top 25, right? If you would have fought Sam Goodman, beat Cardenas, beat MJ, and then beat Picasso, I would totally agree with you because it's been fucking literally how many years before somebody's done that? Oscar De La Hoya is probably the last guy to have 4 fights of that magnitude in 1 year. Oscar, the guy we were hating on earlier. Wasn't Usyk beat Fury and was Fighter of the Year for 1 fight, I believe? Yes. Crawford winning makes the award not credible. First fight in his natural weight class. Oh my God. You guys are fucking incorrigible. Come on. It's a nice going out for Crawford to, end his career Fighter of the Year. I knew he still has 3 top 10 wins in 1 year if he wins against Picasso. Yeah, and if he fucking looks sensational against Picasso, blowing him out in 3 rounds or something, that would be huge as well, right? We will see. Like, obviously, Inouye's going to be right there in the conversation. As far as Kensho Taraji, well, he did lose to Sandoval, so I don't know if he would be in that conversation, even though I thought he beat Sandoval and the fight could easily have went uh, the other way. It was a very competitive, close fight. So, and obviously he was in Fight of the Year for unification prior to that. So yeah, you know, Usyk beat Fury twice in the same year. Was it twice? Were those two fights all in 1 year or 1 calendar year? Tragedy unified titles, could have beaten Sandoval, and if he wins, it means he wins another title in his third weight class. Both of his fights were Fight of the Year contenders. I agree, they were. Does that mean Devin Haney's in the Fighter of the Year? You know, the LDBC got him number one. Do you look at trainers like Bomac, Eddie Reynoso as overrated for only really building one fighter apiece? Well, I never really jump on that hype train for trainers. That's something mostly the FBA fucking content creators do, right? Where they just want to fucking make everything about race. For me, I never fucking pay attention too much to fucking that whole situation. The reality of the situation is you're only as good as the fighters that you have winning. So in that case, probably you should have Mikey Garcia's brother as fighter trainer of the year because he's got the most top level fighters that are always competing for world titles. Trainers are like ice cream. Doesn't matter what they do, they just get credit for their fighters. Exactly. Exactamundo. Like, you think about Inouye's father. Why isn't he in the conversation? Inouye's won 4 fights this year if he beats Picasso, and his brother just became a 2-time champion, right? He only has 2 fighters in his stable, but both of them are world champions. So, you know, whatever he's doing, it's working. He's doing a good job. So, hats off to him. But I'm going to jet. Thanks, everybody. I got to work tomorrow. My last day before my Christmas holidays start. So, and then I'm going to have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So 6 days in a row. And then 3 days back to work. And then New Year's, I took Friday off. So then another 4-day weekend. So nice. Ending 2025 with a nice little break. Stay white and beautiful. Well, I've got no choice now. I'm not getting a suntan in this weather, but peace out, everybody. Have a good one. Ciao.